Hey Lionheart Nation, welcome back to another week and another episode. Today I talk with my friend Corrina Coffin, who is a little bit of a rock star. She is an obstacle course racer, a CrossFit athlete, and essentially whatever she sets her mind to. What I think is really cool about this episode is we really talk about the different ways that certain training can affect the outcome of other disciplines. And that's something I've been intimately familiar with in my life because I really cross back and forth between strength and endurance a lot. And she really talks about some of the struggles that come about when you try to be really good in two different disciplines. And then the other thing that she does is she talks about some of the ways that they really benefit each other. And I think as we go through the episode, you'll realize that there's a lot more benefit to be gained between the two than there is to be lost. So without further ado, here's Corrina Coffin. All right, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv in San Diego, California. And today I am joined by Corrina Coffin. Thanks for being on, Corrina.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick.
So I'm really excited to get into everything you've been up to, but I do want to give the audience a little bit of a background. So when I first reached out to you about being on the podcast, I have your response. It says, maybe in a few months when I'm doing some cooler things. Hopefully to make regionals this year on a team and, of course, OCRs, so that would make for some interesting podcasting. So since then, you have been to regionals in the CrossFit Games season. You've also won $25,000 in a Tough Mudder. You've also been on Steve Austin's Broken Skull Ranch, and you've also taken second in the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships. Am I missing anything?
In the U.S. Obstacle Course Racing Championships. So
okay.
I have the World Championships in a little less than a month. So, but yeah, other than that, you're pretty spot on. It's been quite eventful since last talking to you.
Yeah. So second in the U.S., not the world yet.
Yes. Yeah. Not the world yet. Yeah. Hopefully that would be a nice goal. So
what happens if you win the world and you're still second in the U.S.? Does that mean you?
Oh, I never thought about that, but
I feel like that's a pass. I feel like you get number one.
You're right. I think that trumps it all.
Yeah. It's like if you win Miss America, you've got to be Miss whatever state you're from, right?
That's right.
So can you tell us, just to give the audience a little bit of the background that would lead somebody into like an eclectic career that you're in right now? What did your background look like? What did your sports career look like kind of growing up through school and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, growing up was all competitive soccer. Did all the travel leagues and everything with my brothers. And then in high school was cross country and lacrosse. And when I went to college, I decided to continue with lacrosse just on a club team, but it was fairly competitive for my first 2 years. And then I got into triathlon on the club triathlon team my junior and senior year, and that's when I found CrossFit. So the simultaneous discovery of both of those sports and kind of getting into both of those scenes really set me up well. I didn't know it at the time, but it set me up well for this sport of obstacle course racing, which, it's kind of funny. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how competitive it can be within the elite groups. So
yeah, for sure. Obstacle course racing at this point it's a complete professional sport, right?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, yeah, there's definitely there's the first couple heats that go off that are, the elite heats, and then the rest of the people are mainly taking it just for fun. But
okay.
So it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. I feel like there's not a whole lot of people that are doing it as like a recreational competitive kind of sport.
And it's similar to CrossFit where there's really not a lot of barrier to entry. So if you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a really good athlete, you could essentially sign up for these elite heats and kind of just win your way to the top of the sport, just like you could in CrossFit. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say it's definitely easier to work your way up in the ranks of, obstacle course racing than it necessarily is on, in other sports. So for sure.
Yeah. I think what's cool about the advent of all of these sports is the fact that you don't need that traditional path. Like you're not going to be a pro football player unless you play through high school and college and you do your time in the conventional path. But what's cool about CrossFit and what's cool about obstacle course racing and what's cool about you is that you've made it in both of these things. You've kind of just like decided, hey, I like them and I'm fit enough, and you have the heart, the passion, and the drive, and now you can kind of make yourself something within those sports, it seems like.
Yeah, and I definitely, I look back on like the journey over the past, gosh, now it's been almost 4 years, maybe 3.5, and it's, it is a little bit of luck, a little bit of just really good timing with things, and then the majority of it is right, like what you said, just like training, working towards something, trying to be as fit as possible, and it just meshing really well into obstacle course racing and CrossFit. But I think I entered the scene at the right time, just as this big boom was coming along with obstacle course racing, and kind of got my foot in the door. And it's slipped out a little bit since then, but I've been able to wedge it back in this year with short course, kind of as my training has evolved and kind of changed a little bit over the past
Because
year.
I remember following you and talking to your brother. I remember maybe it was last year or the year before, you were actually doing things like the toughest mudder, which is like the 24-hour event, which I'm assuming is, and I'm not very familiar with a lot of the obstacle course racing, but I'm assuming that training for that is got to be much different than the kind of sprint type events you're doing now.
For sure. Yeah, there's definitely people who train all year round for that 24-hour race. For me, I was racing on a pro team for Battle Frog series, who they went under last fall. But I was racing for them for about 2.5 years, and just got flown all around the country to race, and race quite often. And they were, sponsoring my race entry and my trip out to Las Vegas for that World's Toughest Mudder. So I was definitely one of the less primed racers for that race in terms of that that kind of um, that kind of distance endurance
Hmm.
event, because before then I think my most I'd ever run was about 16 miles. So I doubled that at World's Toughest Mudder, but it was
Nice.
nowhere near some of the it was good, it was a good accomplishment for me, but it was,
Was that your first marathon distance or longer race?
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
for sure. It was. And actually my brother and two of my brothers and one of their buddies came out to pit crew for me. So they had a
Yeah.
blast, just like,
How important was having a crew in a race like that?
oh my gosh. You really, and I didn't make it, past midnight. So, but just from, those 8 hours or 10 hours of being out on the course, like
Mm,
it came in handy to have
yeah.
a support crew, and they were super cute about it, and like, oh, don't move, Corinna, we'll like get everything on for you and feed you. And I remember Jack dipping my fig Newtons in pickle juice and thinking it was the funniest thing to like surprise me with that combo, but at that
Yeah.
point I didn't care, so it was really cool to have them.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's from that midnight point till the end of the race the following day that I'm sure is when you really need the big push. So I don't know what that is like, but there's a lot of people who
Yeah.
do.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, and for you, because you're doing this as, you're actually doing this as competitive, where if I were to do this, it'd be like, yeah, I would like to do the 24 hours and it would be what it is. But for you, since you're actually trying to be really good at a certain time domain, truthfully, it's better, it seems like, that you focus on that time domain, right?
Yeah, and there's athletes like, Ryan Atkins and, his wife Lindsay Webster, who are just phenomenal athletes, and they both, especially Ryan, seem to be able to you know, take the cake in every single one of those domains. So but it's pretty rare to be the best in all of those disciplines. So yeah, it's a little bit, for me, is particularly, you know, I just, it helps to have a focus on a certain distance or a certain type of event, and then just kind of hone in on that for training. Because I think when I think this past year, the reason why I was a little bit MIA from the OCR scene was I was just falling in love with CrossFit, and doing all the strength training and all the metabolic conditioning workouts, and it kind of led me away from just straight running and training for all these 10 plus mile races. And so I was trying to balance the two, for a period of time when I was racing with Battle Frog. And I think I was just, my training methods were just contradicting each other. I was doing strength training and then just to go for a really long run, a couple hours later, and it just didn't. I couldn't quite seem to get the balance, to work, and it's hard. And
Yeah.
it's inspiring to see the people like Ryan Atkins who, can kind of work towards all those, you know, a multidiscipline approach. But
Yeah, living in both worlds. I mean, I think that's probably the hardest thing that I've found. You know, I went from strength to endurance, and at first in endurance, people are like, "Oh, you're really strong. How do you do it?" And it's like, well, I'm just carrying over a little bit of strength still, and actually training them both and getting better at them both at the same time, I found to be extremely difficult.
oh, it's so hard. So I think for me, I was just like I was a little bit burnt out at obstacle course racing at the end of last year, and just decided like, you know, it's winter time. I'm gonna start focusing on my lifts, so my Olympic lifts. And I just moved to Colorado. I was getting in with a fun crew at the gym, at the CrossFit gym there, and we're looking good for regionals. So I was like, hey, gonna turn my focus to CrossFit. I'm having more fun with it, and just kind of play this year by ear a little bit. And it's turned out to be
It
pretty
worked
exciting.
out.
It worked out really well. So I'm excited about that.
And so I'd like to get into the training aspect of it because you did do regionals and a lot of these OCR accomplishments in the same calendar year, right?
Yeah.
And so do you think were they training in similar time domains and energy pathways, or do you think that just coming off of with the strength base of CrossFit and then moving into OCR, you were just that much better prepared?
So actually, my training since November of last year has solely been CrossFit. I haven't. I've run around 5 miles, 4 or 5 miles, maybe a handful of times since then, but I have not, like, OCR totally took the back burner for training, and it was all about CrossFit. Now, again, for CrossFit, I've been following a pretty specific programming, and it's programmed pretty well to have, you know, a lot of longer conditioning metcons in there. So, you know, I think my base the base that I've had in running and endurance sports has carried over, and it's still with me. But that's why I was a little bit hesitant to go to US OCR champs. I was like, you know what, I know it's only a 2 mile course, but I haven't run much longer than 3 miles. You know,
Yeah.
more than 5 times or so in the past, like in this half year or so. So it definitely took me by surprise. I think I wrote in my posts on social media, I was like, it totally took me by surprise, and it really did, because that has taken, you know, like I said, a back burner for sure.
Yeah. So wait, so to clarify, even now, like through these OCR wins or good places, you still haven't ran? You're just training CrossFit?
Yeah, just training CrossFit.
Whoa.
Now that and now that I have Worlds coming up, I'm like, okay, like I think I've gotten not lucky necessarily, but you know, I definitely see the benefit of incorporating more running into my training to leading up to Worlds, because, you know, when you're on a worldwide level now for a race, you're gonna have to just bump up your training. And for me, the running is my weakness right now. So I've been doing more like track workouts, working on those 400s and 800s distances.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Which is kind of a CrossFit thing anyway.
it is exactly. And so it's nice right now because it doesn't feel like it's detracting from my CrossFit training either.
So, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, being out here in Utah, you know, going mountain biking and kind of long hikes, I think that's been helping too with just keeping that, you know, endurance base.
Yeah, that baseline kind of aerobic
Like
conditioning.
that zone 2 training, like every, you know, 2 days of the week or so.
Yeah, that's the training I think a lot of people neglect, unfortunately, to their detriment, because I think when you have that baseline aerobic conditioning, I've just found you're able to, it carries over into a lot of different areas of your fitness. You're able to, even if you're just lifting, you're able to maintain more intensity throughout your training sessions, things like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think more is better and harder is better and faster, and they neglect that. So
Yeah.
100% with you on that.
Hold on, does CrossFit know about this? I feel like you're a poster child for CrossFit. Like, really, because you know what the black box theory is? Do you familiar with that?
I've heard of it, but I'm not.
Yeah, so the black box theory is like, okay, what CrossFit, they kind of backed away from it a little bit, but they used to talk about it a lot. And they say that what you put in is CrossFit, and then what you get out is like you'll be a better power lifter and a better
Yeah.
Olympic lifter and a better runner and all of these things. And a lot of people like kind of challenge them on that, but you are like legit living proof that that's a thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it helps. I mean, I'm sure it does help that I come from the more endurance side of things. That definitely helps.
Yeah.
Because if you never loved running, then you're not gonna come out of CrossFit and be like, man, I just love running. So
Right, right,
that
right,
that
right.
definitely doesn't happen. But I'm I've been, pretty surprised this year with how much of that endurance base I've been able to maintain just through
Mm.
CrossFit.
And so you're following similar to a like CrossFit endurance protocol?
Yeah. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm out here in Salt Lake City, and I just joined the Salt Lake City CrossFit gym, and they have a specific competitors programming run by their head coach. Um, so that, it's about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
um, 5 days a week with, an active recovery day in there. But it's not, I mean, it's not I'm actually on the strength program. There's a strength program,
Whoa.
endurance program, and for CrossFit, and if I want to, be on this team for regionals next year, I got to get my strength up. So I'm actually following all of the all of the strength programming as opposed to the endurance right now.
Man, that is wild. Do you think, how much do you think, just being realistic, how much do you think of that is, and it could be attributed to you just being an animal as an athlete? And then how much of it do you think is actually from the training protocol transferring over?
Yeah, well, so under, I've just been following that strength program at Salt Lake City since mid-August or so, maybe end of August a little bit, because that's when I moved out here. So I haven't been following it for that long. So I don't want to, pretend like I've been doing that the past 6 months or
Right,
so.
right.
Um, but I think it's really smart. Like, I think the programming is great. We obviously have a lot of lifting, a lot of um, there's a huge strength component in the the beginning of the day, and then we've got really smart conditioning. Some of it's just like, even if it's 20 minutes easy of an AMRAP, I think that in CrossFit people always think you got to go 100% every time there's a Metcon. And what I love about this programming here at Salt Lake City CrossFit is, there's percentage days. There's like, hey, do this Metcon at 80% or at 60%, or with your heart
Mm,
rate in 130, 150. So it's nice that it kind of has you develop those zones, those intensity zones, and getting used to working at different intensities as opposed to just having one gear.
okay.
So not sure if that, I mean, again, I'm still figuring out how this is all coming into play with
Right.
my OCR success, quote unquote. But yeah, it's just been a cool journey this year, because again, I was not expecting any of it.
Right, right. And so when we're talking about the obstacle course racing success that you've had, what is the distance and time domain of these kind of races?
Yeah, so Tough Mudder X was the first of its kind, and that was 1 mile, and it included 10 obstacles and 10 fitness zones. So you had 10 fitness stations or zones, um, one to go with each obstacle. So it'd be fitness zone, obstacle, run a little bit, fitness zone, obstacle.
Okay.
Um,
So you
and
were really well positioned for that from
yeah,
CrossFit.
yeah, and they gosh, I came, so I heard about the race and I was like, wow, this seems like it would be right up my alley. I've got the OCR background, and now I'm focused on CrossFit, and it's only a mile. So, I mean, I hope I haven't gotten that out of shape to
Right.
not run a mile. But then when I got there, they had Jesse Graff, all the like really, the really well-known American Ninja Warrior
That's
guys
right.
and
Yeah.
girls out there, and they had some big name CrossFitters who've been to the games, and they had, and then they just had, the top obstacle course racers kind of in the sport right now, and so I was super intimidated when I when I got out there. Not like all of the confidence that I had built up before, like leading into the event, just totally dropped when I showed up. I was just like, oh man, what have I gotten into?
Yeah, just looking at all the big names around you.
Yeah, I think, and it was great for them because it being televised, it was really cool to have athletes from those different disciplines all
Mm.
together competing against each other. Because I think everyone before, when everyone's just sizing each other up at the start line and not like, no one has run the course, I don't think anyone knew what the outcome would be. And they were like, well, it could definitely be a ninja, or it could definitely be a CrossFitter. So it was just kind of cool to run through that and just see where the athletes in different disciplines kind of fell short. I think the CrossFitters were very comfortable doing the CrossFit movements, but had very little experience on obstacles. So,
Mm.
Just being a little hesitant, being a little fearful, or just not trusting their grip, kind of slowed them down a little bit. And then I think for the obstacle course racers, lifting, doing 15 sandbag cleans is definitely time consuming and not part of a lot of their training. And same with the Ninja Warrior people. So it was kind of cool to see some people just flew through certain portions of the race, and then other areas, held them up. So
Sure.
for me, I'm lucky to have, just the obstacle course racing background. And
I mean, you probably perfect for that. Sounds like
it worked out, and I'm glad that Tough Mudder is actually continuing their series next year. So 2018 will be really cool, because I think they're going to put on like 7 Tough Mudder X events.
Are you going to go around snatching them bitches up, or what?
I'd love to. Gosh, I mean, I think, so I actually looked at the course maps or a friend sent it to me, and I think they took out all the sandbag stuff. So they took out the cleans and the shoulder to overhead and the pull-ups, I think. So now it's like it's a little less CrossFit-esque. So I'm wondering if that'll be a game changer. I'm sure it'll change things up. But
and what place did you get in that? And then how long did the mile take you?
Yeah, so I won the Tough Mudder X, and the mile. So they time capped it at 25 minutes, and my final round was my fastest, thankfully, and it was I did it in like 14:50 or something.
Okay. Damn.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to you can't talk about the Broken Skull Ranch yet, can you?
I can't talk about the outcome or anything, but I can answer questions about it, I think.
Okay.
Perfect. If you have
Let's try.
And it's I can't say that, I'll just tell you.
So. Okay, perfect. And we can edit out whatever you need to.
Okay.
So, what was the fitness aspect of it like? I guess did it feel like it was lifting? Did it feel like it was running? Like what did that feel like?
Yeah, Broken. I had no idea. I watched the show a little bit, especially knowing that I was going to be on it. So I continued with my regular training, just because I was not about to change anything for this show that I had, very little information about. But it was very short and very intense. So you would, because it is production and they do 3 different. The show puts on 3 different events, 3 different challenges, but you have to win to get to that 3rd event. So it's single elimination, kind of bracket style, head to head. So you're just doing really short head to head events, less than 5 minutes, but you are totally gassed, like you're going 100% and are just totally gassed by the end of it. So that was great with CrossFit. I mean, it seems that the CrossFitters definitely do
right
well in those, those types of challenges. So he does like his strength. He does like having heavy shit in there, and then showing how badass it looks on TV. So.
Yeah, and did they invite you to go on that show?
So they reached out to me like 2 years ago, and I think every year I got some sort of email or Facebook message from one of the casting producers, and I always turned them down. Like I
really?
I turned them down the past 2 years because I was just like, this is not. First of all, and I was pleasantly surprised with my experience on the show, because when I watched it, I was just like, well, everyone's trash talking each other, kind of being douchey, and no one looks good on the camera in terms of like how they're presented and their demeanor towards the other athletes, and it was just like I could not see myself on there. And but after winning Tough Mudder X, and I saw he was just like, no, thanks, it's not for me. After winning Tough Mudder X, Hunter McIntyre was like, Corinna, you just, I'm calling the producers tomorrow. Like, I'm buddies with them. Like, they're gonna call you. You need to go on this show. And so,
Nice.
So that's exactly what happened. And I was just like, I don't want to do this, but I went through all the steps, and then, you know, I got there, and I was just, I was pleasantly surprised that they were like, hey, you're not a shit talker, and that's not, you know, how you are. You don't do that. We're not going to feed you any lines. We're not going to make you try.
Mm-hmm.
We just ask that you're confident in, and when you say things, don't mean, I think I'm going to do well in this. It's like, no, like if you think you're going to do well in it, say, I'm going to do well in this, you know?
Yeah.
But they're not going to feed you lines to say against any other of the competitors. So for me, I think that was A, reassuring, B, it just, you know, I'm excited more so just to kind of watch the episode and see how it all plays out, because I think our group of girls they were pretty respectful, and it was a good experience.
Yeah, that's actually good to know that they don't feed you lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was a little worried just because, I mean, you watch it and you're like, wow, that was really stupid, or like corny, right, or just like super lame, and so you're just like, really, like someone must have told them to do that. And you know, you get caught up in the competitiveness of the show a little bit, and they definitely like egg that kind of atmosphere a little bit, but you don't have to like. I didn't participate in that. So.
Yeah. Well, and so what's interesting too is like in CrossFit specifically, you know, the guy that finishes first is cheering loudest for the guy that's like coming in last, which is a really cool aspect of that sport. And so it is weird to probably see the dynamic, the opposite of that.
It is, yeah. And we actually weren't allowed to, like, they really didn't like us talking to one another, just to kind of keep everyone focused on themselves and not interacting like in a positive, like, you know, because girls, when you get a group of girls together, we like to be chatty Cappies, or some of us do, and like make friends. And so especially when you're in a new place, so they kind of wanted to quiet us down and keep us a little bit separate, right, so that you know, you just had that kind of aggression and, you know, no friendliness with anyone, like once you're going head to head. So I see it from that perspective, but it was definitely different than what I've just known through the CrossFit community and the OCR community.
Sure. And did you have to wrestle another chick?
That is one of the events. I'm not sure if I can say that.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I can say, okay. Well, what I will say about the events is, I moved out here to Salt Lake City like probably a week before I went on the show, and there was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym right across the street from the CrossFit gym that I was working out at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, there's a good chance I'm going to have to wrestle someone on this show. And because a lot of the head-to-head events, even if you're not directly trying to wrestle someone and get them out of,
you're trying to like throw them out of the way and get somewhere.
Tug of war, you're doing this and that, and you have to like, it would just help to have good body control and positioning, and be a little bit just be able to move quicker and know how to get the other person in a position that you want them to be in. So I went to a couple open gym sessions, and they were super helpful there at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, and then I ended up going to a couple MMA classes and then a couple BJJ classes during the week leading up to it. So I didn't use any particular, it was just like so much information overload doing those classes. Like, oh my God, how am I supposed to remember all this stuff? But I think just a generalized, just a conception of, okay, like this is the best body positioning so that she doesn't, you know, take advantage of you know, my position and whatnot. So I think it really helped in terms of like just general concepts that I was going there, and took a couple classes. But yeah, it's just kind of like a free for all.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah. Lifetime of CrossFit, week of jiu-jitsu. Let's fucking do this.
Right. But I do want to continue jiu-jitsu. I would love to. I'm trying to figure out with just school and my CrossFit training right now, to add on jiu-jitsu would just be a little bit too much at the time, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask if you're wanting to continue any of the combat sports.
yeah, well, I went back to the gym, of course, like after they wanted to hear about it and everything, my experience, and so I went to a couple more classes, but it's just really hard once school started picking up. So I was thinking either like maybe in the winter when things slow down a little bit, or just do like one-on-one lessons whenever I can, kind of
Hmm.
squeeze it in.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
oh
And
yeah.
so the other one was the U.S. Obstacle Course Racing Championships.
Oh yeah. So that
Awesome.
one, I booked my flight maybe a week before the race, and I registered at the same time, like a week before. So it was very last minute. I went mainly. I was like, I'm not gonna do very well in this. I know it. But I'm gonna go. I want to see all my OCR friends. I feel like I've been out of the loop a little bit this year, so just be fun to go down for the weekend. It was the Labor Day weekend,
Hmm.
or yeah, Labor Day.
Okay.
Yeah. And so so anyway, yeah, so I went there, and you know, it was so weird because I just was not um I the other ladies competing, some of them are really really good in the Spartan series, and did Nicole Miracle. She is one speedy gal, and I've got about 20 pounds on her, and she's a climber, and she's been crushing it this year in obstacle course racing, and some of her competitors were there as well that she's been racing against all year long. So I was like, you know what? It's a lot different. Like her 2 miles from her versus 2 miles from me is going to be like very different. But I'm
Sure.
here, want to just jump into it, see where I'm at. And the first, actually, I think my doubts really came in after looking at the course, and the first mile and a half was just straight running. So that was pretty. I was just like, wow, it was straight running, and then the tail end is packed with obstacles.
Hmm.
So really was thinking that was not my jam, especially um, opening up with such running, a running concentrated race.
Yeah.
But and I was right. I started off. I was about in eighth place or so, and we'd have a couple logs to hop over, so it really wasn't anything substantial. And so kind of picked my way a little bit from like eighth to seventh, and then coming into the first obstacle of the last series on that end stretch, was able to make up some ground on some of the ladies in front of me and found myself in fifth. And then the next obstacle I was in fourth, and then before you know it, someone was yelling at me like, "This is for podium, like this is for a podium spot," and I was like, "What? That's crazy!" And so I think where my strength came in was with CrossFit, right? We're used to, under a lot of fatigue, still being able to use, our muscles, and doing some pretty, I don't know, just doing some like I think for a lot of the obstacle course racers out there, they're running very long distances in their races, doing an obstacle, running really long distances, but to have consecutive obstacles back to back to back definitely simulated more of a CrossFit type workout for me, because you're always lifting something, or you're always doing something with your body weight, or more weight. So I think some of the smaller ladies would get to these obstacles and have to really take a deep breath and kind of get their bearings together before initiating the obstacle. Whereas I was just like, I'm so tired, but I'm just gonna go, because
Right.
I trust my grip, I trust my body awareness, and I know I can do this under fatigue. So I think that's where it came in handy for that last stretch. And myself and Julia, who came in third, we were neck and neck, like on the very last obstacle, and I just was able to edge out on her and beat her by a couple seconds. So,
Damn.
so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it was exciting at the end, but I was Nicole crushed it. She smoked us. So uh,
Nice.
well, she will definitely be a hard one to beat in a month at OCR World Championships. But
Hmm.
uh, you know,
And so when you have, and I'm just speculating, but when you have a race, it's a mile and a half run straight into a lot of obstacles. What is your strategy there? Are you sprinting that mile and a half? Because I'd imagine if you show up to those obstacles redlined, you're kind of fucked.
yeah. And so that's what I exactly what I was debating. at the start line, and beforehand I'm just like, okay, what, like, I know these girls are going to come off really fast. I didn't want to, my goal was to not to redline. I don't, I feel like through all my obstacle course racing and endurance racing, I've have this inherent pacemaker where I just like can't, my body does not let myself redline. And sometimes that's a weakness in my CrossFit training because I hold back a little bit. But in these obstacle course racing events, it seems to, be a strength of mine because I'll hold back a little bit in the beginning. And that's why I was okay. I wasn't freaking out about being in 8th place in the beginning, but I knew that I could pick off people towards the end. So yeah, my strategy was not get lost in the big pack and further back, but top 10 for that first mile or so would be totally okay as long as I really capitalize on the obstacles portion later on.
Yeah, I heard a guy talking a long time ago about the 80-20 rule in shorter events, and I try to stick to it, and I think it works pretty well, which is like for 80% of the event, if you go 80%, and then the last 20% you go 100%, it seems to be a decent way to try to break stuff like that up. Otherwise, I redline out of the gate.
Yeah, so disheartening, like literally having nothing left, and you're not, you still have 20% of the race, right?
Yeah.
And I have to go so slow. So I'm more of a second half kind of girl too. So
Yeah.
Definitely pick things up at the
Well,
end.
and for longer events like regionals, I'd imagine even that probably helped you out a lot because a lot of times the top CrossFitters, it seems, they're not going all out because they can't because you have so many events you have to do.
Yeah, and for regionals for this year, I mean, this past year was, well, it was my first regionals, but also since it was a team event, it's a little different because you're not doing a ton of work as a team. There's 6 of you, so when you go, you just have to go closer to that 100% because it's a short period of time, and then you tap out for your next buddy. So it's a little different with the team, but I would imagine the individuals are probably
Right.
working around that 80%.
Right. Yeah. With team, you get that break period when your other partner's going. That's true.
Exactly.
And so thinking about the entire year, this is another thing I was actually really interested to get into with you because a lot of athletes have an event that they peak for and then they train all year and then they peak for it. Like I just did that. But for you, because you're trying to compete at a higher level, multiple events, and it seems like obstacle course racing and CrossFit are both kind of this way, where you don't really peak. Maybe you peak strength for regionals and you try to do some tweaks like that. But what does your training look like overall in order to maintain as high of a level of fitness as you can going into these different events?
Yeah, and that's a good question because my focus was leading up to the end of May for regionals, and so that was everything was geared towards regionals. And then once that was over, I was just like, okay, like I had no plans of doing Tough Mudder X. I don't think I knew about it at the time of regionals, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, or maybe it was just around the time of regionals that I had found out about it. But either way, like I wasn't. That was not my mindset. Was not getting ready for that. It was just CrossFit. And so once regionals was over, I always loved to have that next thing to work towards and just to keep the intensity up and to keep, some sort of goal in my training. And so I think for me this year, because I didn't have a set agenda or schedule after regionals for like what I was going to do, and everything was kind of on a whim, like had no plans of doing Broken Skull Ranch, had no plans of doing Tough Mudder X, had no plans of doing US OCR champs. So for me, and it's just kind of been just something I've taken kind of my mantra over the past 3 years is just being able to maintain that high level of fitness or as high level fitness as possible throughout the year. And in order to achieve that, it's not go like 100%, 100%, 100% all the time. Because I think for me, I've learned quickly, especially through when I was doing a lot of obstacle course racing, it was the importance of the active recovery days, the importance of the rest day, the importance of, having different levels of intensity, listening to your body, recovering well through, nutrition and hydration, and just being a little bit more in tune with my body as a whole. So I think I've done a much better job this year of taking one active recovery day, taking one day totally off, bringing the intensity throughout the week in my training. And so like once I'm in training mode, I'm going hard. When I'm not, I'm taking it very easy, and so that I can maintain that level of fitness and not get burned out. So.
And so you train 5 days a week and you do one active recovery?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what does your
So
active recovery look like?
swimming. Thursdays are mainly swimming, or like an easy mountain bike ride. But right now it's been mainly swimming, and then Sundays are totally off. But it's kind of hard to stay. It's hard to stay still
Yeah.
some days, especially when you're in such a gorgeous place like Salt Lake City. There's always things to explore. So, but again, I think like even just going out for a hike, that zone 2 kind of hiking, or maybe like a little jog or like a slow bike ride. Like I think that really can help contribute towards that baseline fitness. For sure.
And so, active recovery aside, are there any other recovery methods that you use that you're like particularly fond of? Other than, I mean, do you roll out? Do you like the standard protein 30 minutes after you work out? Like, what does your recovery
Yeah.
routine look like?
I mean, so I love rolling out in lacrosse ball, and using lacrosse ball, but I've been pretty bad at, especially like between classes when I have very limited amount of time to like get in a little bit of my workout. I just kind of, I'll do a great warm up, but then the cool down, I kind of just like, all right, I'm done. I got to run back to campus. So I've been neglecting that a little bit, but I've actually, and since the last time we talked, this has been different. I've actually started tracking my macros. And I figured, especially since I'm doing a nutrition program here, it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to just
Know where you're at.
For anything, for what it's worth, just to know where I'm at, but also just go through that process. If I'm going to be counseling, clients or patients on tracking their food and weighing it out and everything, and trying to hit certain macros or micronutrients, I should do it myself. And so
Sure.
I finally caved and have been doing it for about 3 weeks now. And I kind of like it, kind of addicting. Like, I mean, it sucks to like before you eat, get your phone out and like put it all in there. But I've just realized I had no idea where I stood in terms of protein and carb and fats on a regular day. And I think just tracking it and having that awareness has been really helpful, because I think I leaned towards a higher fat, less carbs, and my protein was like under 100 grams a day. So I definitely needed to tweak some things. And so I haven't changed it too much from like where I would usually kind of just gravitate towards, but I've definitely been trying to hit certain marks. And if I'm not at the amount of calories that I want to be at for the day, like just keep eating. So
Yeah.
it's been almost like a force feeding me a little bit. But I feel like it's been huge with my recovery time or recovery and just feeling re-energized the next day, because I think I had some days where I was just not hitting enough calories, and then it took a negative toll on me the next day for training.
Yeah, sure. And actually, I've heard that a lot. People that begin to track their macros end up feeling like they have to eat way more than they thought they did.
Yeah, and some days it's like super easy for me to hit like just the calories in general, but the macros too. And other days I'm like, I am so full and I still have 100 grams of carbs to go and 20 grams of protein. So it's some days it's just funny, but it's I feel like it's probably good for my body to hit that consistency, especially from a recovery standpoint, which I never really worked with before.
And what does your diet look like? Are you paleo mostly, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so I'm actually I eat anything and everything, but I am, uh, I think we talked about this last time too. As much as while I am tracking macronutrients, I'm very much a micronutrient kind of girl, and looking at nutrient density of foods, and not just eating a bunch of chicken because it's got a lot of protein. It's not as high in micronutrients. I love to keep it varied, lots of fruits and vegetables. Eating more oatmeal now, like with my smoothies, just to kind of add more carbs to it, and some rice, but still keeping like the vegetable and fruit count up a lot, so that I'm not just eating a chicken rice sweet potato kind of deal like you
Right.
see the bodybuilders gravitate towards.
And
So, oh no, yeah, that's about it. It's not um, I'm not I'm not a vegetarian, but I don't. It's not like meat, chicken, meat. Meat in every meal. I like to keep it a pretty much primarily a plant based diet for the most part, with some meat in there a couple of
mhm.
times a week.
And is that because I think that a lot of people miss the bus on micronutrients? I think there's a huge focus on macro, and typically there's a lot of like minerals that we miss in our
Mhm.
diet. How is salad or is vegetables the way that you typically try to get a lot of those minerals, or are there go-to foods you have?
Yeah, yeah. So mainly, I for dinner I put everything on a bed of lettuce or a bed of greens or super greens or something. Um, but I've actually like for protein a little bit. I love brewer's yeast. I've kind of stumbled upon brewer's yeast, and it's a lot of vegans use it for kind of a cheese substitute. But I'll cook that with my vegetables or put it on my eggs or cook it with or bake it with kale in the oven. It's a great way to add in a lot of the B vitamins that you find in a lot of the meats, and it's just a good way, a flavorful way to add that into your meals and add a little protein as well. That's plant based. I
Yeah,
guess
sure.
so. Yeah, that's been my kind of superfood find that I've just stuck with lately because it tastes so good and it's good for you.
And so you're going to school to actually become a nutritionist?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in nutrition, food and exercise, and Spanish, and then doing this 2-year grad school program in sports nutrition, and I'll come out with my master's and as a registered dietitian. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And so you're balancing a lot right now. You got school, you're crushing essentially everything that you do, unless there's some stuff that I'm missing. And yeah, I'm curious, are there habits that you have, and I might have asked you this last time as well, but are there habits that you have that you think contribute to you being able to consistently perform at a high level that maybe a lot of people don't do?
Um, Thank you for all those things. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think, I think it just comes from this drive that of you know it just comes from this inherent drive of always wanting to be better and always wanting to improve on things and not setting any limits for myself and for yourself in general. So I think wanting to wanting to reach my potential and striving for that every day, I feel like that's what gets me going. And some people, just some people don't have that. They get complacent, or they're cool with what's going on with them right now. And so I don't really know exactly where that comes from. I think a lot of it has to do with your upbringing, and raised on a horse farm with 3 older brothers. Definitely
Yeah.
always, I swear that has just, I think that was just so good for me, and has contributed more than I'll ever know to kind of like how I am, and my competitiveness and my drive. So I've got a lot to thank my brothers and my parents for sure.
Hmm. And all right, so we talked a little bit about the combat sports possibly becoming a thing. Are you ever going to get back into triathlon or anything like that? Do you think? Or are you going to stick
I'd
with
love
OCR?
to. Yeah, I've been keeping up with swimming on my active recovery days, getting more into mountain biking now as opposed to road biking. But I love both, and you know, I'll, I'll I'll find my running legs again more
Yeah.
on the distance side of things. But yeah, I'd love to. I never want to rule anything out. I think just having that variety in your training and always keeping things exciting and interesting. And hey, if I get burnt out from CrossFit, at some point, which I don't see myself doing because it's just there's so much to do within
Yeah.
CrossFit. But yeah, like I think triathlon's great to add in, or that could definitely be an Ironman's on my bucket list eventually.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really cool to be well rounded and be able to jump into anything, and know that you'll be set up fairly well for success.
Yeah, for sure. I think that CrossFit.com it needs to stay woke on what you're doing because I think that they need to. I mean, I'm serious. They need to write like some kind of article about like That's like the perfect marketing platform for what they're doing.
Well, maybe I'll get in touch with them at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Or I will. I'll let you know. So the Lionheart Kicker is a final question we try to ask every guest, and it's based on all the things that you've done up until this point and all the experiences that you've had. If you could recommend advice and it were guaranteed that it'd be translated to every language and everybody would hear it, and it can be based on fitness or it can just be life advice, whatever you think, what would you tell people?
I would tell people to take care of themselves first and foremost. And I think that not in a selfish way, but I think that taking care of your health, taking care of your mental well-being, your physical well-being, I think there's a lot to be said about people who put that as a priority in their life and how that reflects in other areas of their life, work, relationships. I just think it creates a much healthier, environment for everyone to be in. And, just as for me and you, as fit people, it's sometimes you see other people who are struggling, whether it's with their weight or their just health problems in general, and you just wish that, and if they don't really care about it so much, you just wish that you could have them feel what it feels like to be healthy and be able to do anything, right? We go travel and climb a mountain or hop into a 5K or it's just something and have that ability. So I feel like just a lot of people neglect their personal well-being, and it plays a much larger role in so many things than we really give it credit for.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, over the years, like when you get older, you'll understand, but you begin to shift focus a little bit and you start to figure out like, what are my goals within fitness? Like, what am I trying to do? Mm-hmm. And one of the goals that I've come across is like the idea of just being capable. Like, we talked about Ironman, like I'm going to do an Ironman in December, not because I've trained all year for this, but because like that's what fitness is to me. It's like the ability to just be capable of having these experiences that a lot of people wouldn't be capable of had you not put in the time on yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
Keeping it fun. Like, if you're, capable of doing an Ironman, but you have no interest in doing Ironman, find something that,
right.
you exactly. But and some people it just pains me when people think of like physical activity or eating healthy as super boring and just bland. And there's so many things to do out there. There's so many, there's just so many things you can never get bored with it. So I just urge people to find that balance in their life and joy in, all the little things and being active and healthy. Like it's the best way to live for sure.
Right. Yeah. And it's also like hiking and biking and all these other things that we've talked, like exploring, Exactly. That's cool. So when does Broken Skull Ranch air? When people check
it airs Tuesday. They're on Tuesday nights now at 9 Central, and it'll be on my episode will air on November 14th, I believe.
Okay, awesome. And then for people that are listening to this and they want to follow along with you and support your journey with what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on my Instagram, which is cscoffin13. Mm-hmm. And so I will definitely be keeping everyone updated on what I'm up to via the Instagram.
Okay, awesome. And we'll link all of that up in the show notes of this episode as well. Corinna, thanks for being on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much, Rick.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. CrossFit.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshits. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland.